All right, and continue with that. So if a is a negative number, or if a is less than 0, every time you graph a parabola, the parabola will open downward. It's just a nice piece of information to have when we're going forward. Okay. Of course, when you look at this, if it's opening downward, that's known as a maximum point. So that's the highest value we'll get. And if it's the lower point here, that's known as a minimum value. Minimum. All right. Again, I'm kind of going through the textbook here, just going through the key concepts that'll help you with the 9.1 stuff. Also, another piece of information to know about a, and when we're in y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, the closer this guy gets to 0, all right, so if a is a really, really small number or fraction, like 0.2 or something like that, it's going to be y. If it was negative 0.2, it gets wider. If a is a really big number, that means it's going to grow very quickly, then it's going to be narrower. Okay, so when we look at this, if I say we have y equals 4x squared minus 9x, and I have another one that says y equals negative 1/2 x squared plus 7, and I ask you which one is going to open wider, this one would open downward, that would open upward, but since 1/2 is closer to 0 than 4, this one would be a wider parabola. I'm just looking at that a value that's there. All right, one of your sections in your practice today has that in there. All right, so if you're asked, like in the warm-up, if you did the warm-up that was posted, to graph a quadratic, you just pick ordered pairs that are going to be useful to you. You're going to see it's going to grow very quickly because we have the squared there. But let's say we had like 1/2 x squared plus 3. What I want to do then is I'm just going to pick ordered pairs for x that when I plug in, I'm going to square it first. Notice there's a multiplication sign there, and then take half of it. And this is nice because anytime you square something, you're going to get an even number anyway. That's not true. Anytime, we want numbers that when you square it, you'll be able to take half of it. If you get decimals, then you just adjust it to your decimals. But what we'll do then is find a bunch of ordered pairs. We'll learn how to find the vertex in a minute, but try 0 right now. Plug 0 in. You do 0 squared times a half. You're going to get 0 plus 3 is 3. If I plugged in 1, I would do 1 squared, which is 1, times a half, which is 1/2 plus 3, or 3.5. You might try -1. You're going to end up getting -1 squared. Notice you're squaring that. So if it's negative and you square, you still get positive. 1 times a half is a half plus 3 is still positive 3.5. Maybe you try 2. So that's 4. Half of 4 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. Notice what happens when you plug in -2. You square -2, you get 4. Half of that is positive 2 plus 3 is 5. And then I just go ahead and sketch this out. All right, 0, 1, 2, 3 would be right here. +1, 3.5, -1, 3.5, +2, 5, -2, 5. And what's going to happen if you graph that? You're going to see a nice parabola open up. All right, and that's all we do when we sketch this stuff. We plug the values in. We square it first, multiply it by a, and then do the next, whatever's over here. If it's just a constant, we add that to it. And then from there, let's see here. Okay, we got the width, we got that. The other thing that's on here is they talk about this falling object model. We're going to get a lot more into this. This h equals -16t squared. And they ended up with like plus s, I believe they might put over there. T is just your time in seconds. We're going to talk about this as we go on, but this is kind of a general model of our vertical motion. Just plug values in for time. This will give us our ending height. So on the your first page today, they just ask you to plug some numbers in here and see what happens. All right, so as we go forward, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But on your 9.1 paper that you're looking at here, if this first page here, it says, in physics class demonstration, the ball's dropped from the roof with a height of 72, and we use the function h equals -16t squared plus 72. Just it says graph the function. By the way, I have graph paper at the school. The school is open on Wednesdays. If you guys want to go in there any Wednesday, you could pick up information if you left your stuff in the locker and you got to get in there. It's actually open tomorrow. and then every Wednesday after that, the secretaries will be in. But graph the function. B, how far does the ball fall in time is 0 when it's 1. So we plug 0 in. We just do 0 squared times negative 16, or 0 would get 72. So 0 comma 72. When I plug 1 in, so h is going to equal negative 16 times 1 squared, which is 1 plus 72. Now 72 plus negative 16 is going to get us what? 62, 66. So I believe I did that right. 56. And then I plug 2 in there and just keep doing that math. Notice though, you're going to square that first and then multiply by negative 16 plus 72. So you get your outputs there, you'll plot those. Use the completed table to graph the function. Again, just kind of sketch a graph, and you will see a parabola start to open up there. H equals negative 16 times 0 squared plus 72. What is the height of the ball at t equals 0? We know that. What is the height of the ball when t equals 1? We got that. How far is the ball fallen? Okay, from this time to this time, so what's the difference there? And then it asks you some more information. And think about what you know from science class. As a ball falls, it's going to pick up speed, right? Your meters per second or feet per second. And actually, that distance it falls from 0 to 1, you're going to see is a little different than it falls from 1 to 0. We don't have a linear relationship. We have a quadratic. All right, so you can kind of finish that up and go from there. On the inside of that paper, identify the vertex. So we're just looking at this. What is that ordered pair, that ordered pair, that ordered pair? Is it opening up or down? Is it a max or min? Okay, graph each function. Create a little table of values. Plot them out. If you get decimals, that's fine. You should notice we have symmetry. Each of these cases, we are going to be on the y-axis, okay, because I noticed some characteristics about this. Order each of the groups from widest to narrowest. Remember, widest means closest to 0 to largest. So I just order these guys where my A is closest to 0. The sign doesn't matter. It's just which one is closest to 0 is the widest. Which one is furthest from 0 is the narrowest. Okay, graph each function. Creating a table of values. Plotting graphs. Okay. You'll notice symmetry becomes helpful. We'll talk about that as we go forward. And then you got a couple of some word problems just to figure out again with our vertical motion model. Just plug in, see what ends up happening. All right, the domain and range. In all these cases, domain just means our possible x values. And for the most part, I could plug any number I want in for x and square it. That doesn't matter, right? No matter what I plug in, I'm going to get an output. Okay, but the range are my possible y values. And think about that. If I have a parabola that opens downward, then my y values are only going to be down here. So my range, let's say this ordered pair were like 3 comma negative 2, then my range would be negative 2 down, right? Y would be all values that would be from negative 2 down. If my parabola was graphed and it looked like this going up, and I ended up being here at like 0, 2, then my y's would be all the values that are greater than that. So my range would be anything. I could plug any number I want in, left or right, but my y's would only be hitting there. So in all these cases, guys, once you plug 0 in, since there's no b term, and again, some characteristics I notice, once you plug 0 in, that's going to give you your vertex each and every time here. That's not true for every quadratic, but these, because there's no b term, that's the case. So whenever you plug 0 in and get that output, which hint, hint, it's going to be right here, then that's going to tell you if it opens upward, that's going to be from 5 up would be my range, because that's what you'll hit if you graph it. If it opens downward, it's going to be from 3 down, because 0, 3 is going to be my vertex. Okay, so some things that you'll get used to as we keep going. Don't worry about using graphing calculator. All right, I know you guys don't have that, so if you either want to try those or skip those, that's fine in that section, and then you can go from there. All right, so we're just getting into the introduction to our quadratic formula stuff. All right, I'm looking at it. I think we covered everything on that. We get more specific going forward. Tomorrow we start talking about axis of symmetry and incorporating that b term a little bit more. All right, so that should be enough information to help you get going today on that stuff. Again, check the e-board for information. Sign up for Remind if you haven't done so already, and kind of just keep plugging away. You know, I know it's not easy. It's going to be a challenge the next couple of weeks, but hopefully with the technology we have, we'll be able to get through. If you have any questions, you can email. You can send something on Remind. I'll get both of those. If you got on either of those sites, I'll be able to get any questions that you guys have. If it's something specific, put it in there. I'll put answers to stuff. I'll show you how to do work if that's the case. All right. So whatever you need, just reach out. I'll do what I can on my side. And again, just keep plugging away. Don't get too frustrated. And we'll see how long we can keep going with this. All right. I'll see you.